the high boat video.
Oh, they show you how to do a.
Oh, yeah, you have to.
Oh, I suppose.
You always row to the danger. Do it backwards. You never, when you roll a boat, you're used to it's behind you.
Yep.
But then a drift boat's forward, so you're always rolling. You go this way and push. But you
Okay.
can just spin, and when.
Oh, cause it's more of a.
Yeah, that's a regular.
I was just very surprised that we didn't have more.
They're just sweet because you could just, fields or anything, and you can just stop
Statements,
even in heavy current because you have so much more.
more phone calls than I ever had about that.
Cool.
Yeah, when you're in one and the guy who knows how to use one, it's like, that's why when I bought my canoe, I got no keel. I did not want a keel. I made one without a keel on Cedar Street. But, my old town is a river canoe. It's been in here Marquette 3 times too, lots of miles, but you can just,
Sure.
you can shoot across a heavy current without getting bit.
Wendy from the college.
Oh,
Does make sense.
She's
Yeah, I can haul 1,200 pounds on my canoe.
Economic Development Committee report.
okay.
Look at that.
I checked it.
Or not only.
Oh, that's counting your bodies.
Right.
And then you put trot in, and then we carried all the gear. It's just had more room. Canoe, it's cooler prison.
No.
I could see
That thing
green today.
beat up pretty good in that river.
Did you fish out of it too then, or was it?
Oh, yeah, you can, but usually you don't.
Great on its face.
Yeah,
Unless the hole's so big, you can't. Get over it.
Hop out and wade over to.
Yeah, then you just, yeah, but some of them holes, big as this room, and you can't, and it currents and breaks. And you can't, your line just gets, can't stay, so then you go out there.
you stay at your cabin.
But mostly, no, 95%, 99%, you're never.
Your kids done in school now?
They are.
The
Thank
drift
goodness.
or which one? You don't.
How was your concert the other night?
It was nice. It was nice
Right up against shore, bail out,
and see the kids and
you can wade,
There are a lot of kids
the holes are deep, but you can always bail on the edge and get in the
had theirs and it was like all these.
tail, and
It
you can
was really sad.
way downstream.
there were a ton of kids.
Yeah, good, good.
You hook a fish, you
They're lettered in both.
quarter mile. They just go like. a-
That's fun. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Big.
Good.
They're just.
Problem to have.
It's-
Also, as
Yeah, you just
band,
don't put your
the high school graduation on
anywhere near the reel.
What grade is she in?
the sophomore becoming
It'll
a,
just tear your fingernails off. You know?
so sophomores, so they
Yeah.
But I don't have that kind of reel.
Okay.
finish ninth grade don't
I have a $400 fly.
play at the graduation, but all the other kids do. And I never thought about that, but
But the brakes,
that's gotta be kind of
I
cool,
want to,
graduation as a, underclassman and see.
Right.
the rod.
And then to have the seniors come down and join your band.
Doctors and lawyers with 10 weights broke right in.
My grandson is going into 5th grade and he said he wants to play the trumpet.
Yeah, yeah.
It was good to have one at the house.
Yeah,
So I came home the other day and we were gone for a few days and
Guys yelling.
sitting in the driveway, it's like, go dude. It's fun.
They get tired down here.
My oldest brother was a band teacher his whole career.
I read an article on the guys who fish.
We have, my cousin was for a while and then Jerry's cousin is
You're fishing around.
down in Wisconsin, just loves it.
You think you know how to fight a fish, that's absolutely the worst way.
The instruments they can
Fish. And he's
Oh my gosh, my grandson, he got into it. He played,
the rod into your hip right here.
like trying other things, so he
Straight and tight, the lines
always played the trombone,
down here, and then you turn like this.
learned to play quite a few other instruments at the same time.
I tried to talk Aussie to the sax. I love the saxophone.
Actually, I've listened.
that's what Sarah plays.
Does she?
Can't,
Plays the Barry sax and
you
she,
do that, you can move.
it's as big as she. Hey, Josh.
Hey,
Yeah, it was probably one of the best articles.
Oh, yeah. Out the other door.
That seems simple enough, but
It is really simple. And when you try it in a boat, just try it with a brick in your lawn once. That's what I did. That's what he said, go practice it.
yeah.
And just put a 2-pound brick there and watch, try to lift it like this and move it, then do this. That's what you do. You'll just scoop
how you
it
doing, Steve?
Morning, Kelly.
Hey Jay,
heavier.
how are you?
All right.
Morning.
Are we still,
Hey, Kelly?
do we still have to read the emergency
Yeah.
volunteer? Probably not.
Probably.
How long was our certification good on our
So you did a
equalization?
marvelous job calling the roll.
We're still good with us, huh?
I went to our township board and they go, roll call. They don't call anybody's name. It's just, yep, yes, no, yes.
Thought of that after driving home last.
Same sequence every time.
I know we just,
It's very effective. It's very quick.
we did that online version last.
Yeah.
That was like a couple years ago.
Make sure nobody, like, they are being set up
Let you know.
hard vote
Right,
bad way.
right. We don't need to do that.
No, and so if it rotates,
Are you ready?
I really would.
You're going to that meeting
guys
tonight?
A lot of.
line up for a particular commission, a particular item on the
Right.
agenda. That's way beyond.
Yeah,
And it's so,
I should do.
no, I don't think,
David, okay.
and I don't think anybody's
I don't think
interested.
TJ's.
yeah, that's a nice one.
You gotta,
Talk about
Yeah.
just
We do.
yesterday.
Can't do nothing about
We had a,
Okay.
had a, I did,
So
and you went in the same
plan was gonna be to be here early.
last.
But then you got a customer.
Yeah.
Hey, Terry,
I'll just,
you're looking pretty sharp, man.
yeah.
You're looking dapper.
kind of what we were talking about yesterday.
Okay, well, we've got this. Yeah, there's this
It looks good.
one.
It's like the guy, Robert's aide said, what we do.
I don't think you're gonna wear that to football.
Yeah,
It's,
Them are the notes.
it's chicken crap.
great.
Okay. And I'll just kind of deal with
Okay,
Okay, it is 10 o'clock.
okay.
And I have a huge announcement to make. This is the first time that we've all been in the same room since March 20th of 2020. First time we've had 2 new board members with us in person, all 5 of us.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. So welcome, everybody that's here. Welcome to everybody that's online. I think it'll change, Debbie, I don't believe we need to do roll call votes today. So we will try to make sure we that we speak loud enough to know who the motioner and seconder are. But anyway,
If we do, Mr. Chair, do you want us to say our name and do it that way?
yes,
Last name?
that would help.
Okay.
We will call the meeting to order and rise for the pledge. I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there anybody wishes to speak in public forum? Got people online, Ryan?
Mr. Chair, there is no one from the public other than Pine County employees.
Okay. Just one other point of discussion, maybe. We're gonna play this by ear for a while of how, because we are still under emergency order of the governor and probably the Pine County Board. But I think that means we can make our own rules as we see fit. The only reason that makes a difference is if somebody can't make a meeting, it's much easier to say, I'm gonna dial in for this one. If just some of you haven't been on the board, if you can't make a meeting under the regular open meeting rule law, you have to notify the office several days in advance so they can make notice of that. So just so we don't get on the wrong side of the law, so to speak. But we will look to adopt the agenda.
Husband will make a motion to adopt the agenda.
We have a couple of additions and revisions, don't we?
Mr. Chair, yep, we have 2 additions. Consent item number 2.1, an application for premise permit for the Pine City Youth Hockey Association. And consent item 7B, training to approve attendance by any commissioner who desires at the virtual National Association of County annual conference, July 9th through the 12th. And then there's additional information for regular agenda item number 2, the Economic Development Committee report. The minutes are provided for you this morning.
Harry, did I hear you make
Yes.
Ludwig will second.
a motion by Lovegren, second by Ludwig? Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approval of the minutes of June 1st, 21. County Board minutes and summary for publication.
Moore will move them.
Had a motion by Moore, second by Lovegren. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes of boards, reports and correspondence, Pine County Housing Redevelopment Authority, Senior Housing Board of Directors from April 28th, and the Pine County Zoning Board from April 22nd, both of 2021.
Ludwig will move.
Moore will second.
By Ludwig, second by Moore. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Brings us to the consent agenda. You've had that before you for a while.
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Take a second.
Motion by Lovegren, seconded by Waldham. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Kelly, I'm looking at you, but at some point, maybe we have it. Could we have a regular agenda item on the septic cleanup? You know, how many we have total ever approved, how many are paid up, how many are outstanding, whatever. I think it's been an amazing program for people. Get to the regular agenda, Personnel Committee report.
Mr. Chair, I can start it. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll take that. We met on June 7th. I think the main purpose of the meeting is Pine County Sheriff's Office restructure. We had that, it started in public safety, and then we moved it from the public safety meeting into the personnel committee because there was talk of hiring staff. So there was, it's a lot of discussion, and I can't get it all in this thing, but we ended up, the sheriff has a plan that he wants to add a deputy, add a sergeant, and add a lieutenant, which will create movement within the group. So we'll start with the deputy sheriff. When he wants to add the deputy sheriff, and he has in his budget part-time for 2, which is like $60,000. So we're gonna approved at the committee level to eliminate the part-time and use those dollars to fund a full-time deputy, which would be an add. So that we're going to move forward to the board today. And then we had discussion about the sergeant. And which is a separate thing, if he adds a sergeant, it's going to create another gap because it'll pull a deputy up, and then that's going to be another body. So that one we're throwing in front of the whole board, those 2. The lieutenant is an administrative type position that we didn't really make any determination on. That's another discussion we can get to and see if we can get there. I think to go back to the sergeant, the deputy, the first deputy, I think is kind of an easy thing for us to get to because it's basically funded and we're almost through the year. We'll just have to figure out how to fund it the next 2022. The sergeant thing I think is worth a lot of discussion. And if I don't cover this right, Jeff can fill in the gaps, but, he's trying to establish teams with the deputies out there that are familiar with each other. So we have 3 now, really have groups of deputies that work. So he's trying to get us as a sergeant with each group, and they become familiar with each other and know how they respond to things. And it would just make I think a great service model. It's just how do we get there with the funding? So it's nice to have some type of support for the deputies at any time, someone to go to in that. And I think anybody with that kind of background understands that to have a supervisor that's in the field, because decisions are made so fast in their environment anyway. So it can be tough. It's a tough call. That covers the sheriff's office part. So then we had a discussion with Administrator Menke's review that we'll go into closed session and discuss that later. But we'll come forward with that. So
And the STS program,
what's that?
the STS program.
STS?
Oh, STS. Yeah. So thank you. I'm going from my memory. I don't have my notes. So the STS program we're going to eliminate that, which is going to create some dollars too that's in the budget. So how that gets used, the sheriff looks at that's in his budget. So, and I think that's roughly
It's about 87,000.
$87,000 that's in that budget that's a budget.
So
So that
that will fund one of those positions you're talking about.
well, the ask, if I had my notes, the deputy was kind of easy. We're gonna need additional dollars for the deputy because of benefits, everything has tails. And then with the sergeant, there'll still be an add of, I think if you put them both together on those 2, I think we had to come up with like $100,000 or something in our budget.
Yeah, so the fund, as we know, right, funding a position for a financial year is pretty easy, right? We
Right.
can take the funding from the 2 part-timers, we can take some funding from the STS program. We can pay for that 2 part-time to 1 full-time, buy some equipment and not have a negative budget impact for 2021. In 2022, we would have new expenses, and that's where the sergeant position is just over $100,000 for the personnel piece of that. That would be a significant expense in 2021. And I think that's why the Personnel Committee wanted to have some more discussion.
Right.
There's a great understanding, the way Sheriff Nelson laid out the need for the position, the role of the position, his team concept, which if you're interested, right, I think Sheriff Nelson would be glad to explain that in more detail to the board. So by the STS program, we know has had conversation over the last several years because there just has not been the number of inmates available or sentenced to that program for various reasons. And it's not related to the pandemic, although the pandemic certainly took the inmates who might have been on the program out of the program. It still is too few to maintain the program. We will have some additional costs in building maintenance and in solid waste, where the STS crew and Brock in particular have done a lot of work that has not been at an additional cost, whether it's office, repainting, things like that. They've done all that. So there's probably about, in that $87,000 we might save, there's probably $20,000 a year that are now going to be spent by those other departments to have to hire people to do some work. But that's
what I was wondering, if we're fooling ourselves on a global perspective by saying, let's do away with this program, because the benefit to the rest of the county is this much, and we're gonna end up breaking even or going backwards.
No, Mr. Chair, we had a discussion with Dave, sorry, Dave.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we probably, financially, we probably end up ahead,
Yeah.
right? And even if we didn't, there aren't inmates being sentenced to the program. So in essence, we're paying a person a relatively high wage for the level of work, right? If we need somebody to mow grass or move furniture, we can hire that at a lower rate or contract that out at a lower rate. And so there's probably there's not $87,000 of savings. Is it $50,000 or $60,000 of savings?
Yeah, you don't have the benefits and all that with that.
Yeah, so but it's certainly been, the STS program has been a huge benefit.
Right.
Looking forward, I'm sure you guys went through all this, but a year from now, are we gonna say, oh gosh, everything's back to normal now, we got 10 people ready to go on STS and we don't have a program?
I would say no, but I think
Jeff.
authoritatively.
Jeff looks like he's got the
I
answer.
don't know if you want me to come up or yell from here, I'm fine either way.
I can hear you right there.
Okay, so we did look at it and it's come up in the budget meetings for the last 3 years probably on the benefits of where that program is. And we actually saw it the full year before COVID. We would maybe give it one or two at any given time that would qualify for that. And that's hard for Brock to take out and do a bigger project with. And now even more so, obviously COVID was its own thing, but even more so it seems through the courts, the model, and maybe rightly so, is more of a let's furlough them to treatment rather than let's keep them for their days in jail and try to get that treatment track started and up and running and going that way, which takes that population of eligible people that could serve in the STS program down and lower. And that's what we're seeing before the pandemic. And again, now we kind of held off making any decisions until we met with the criminal justice group, which is, the defense attorney and county attorney and judges, probation, and trying to get an idea. Yeah, if they thought that program would be really beneficial post-pandemic. And it was really pretty cold on saying, yeah, we see it happening. So there are actually 5 STS positions that we can fill inside the walls of the jail in the kitchen area. So we do have STS positions that we're still, even with people that are in the jail physically, we're having a hard time filling those positions just because of people being able to qualify into them. So we really did see filling those 5 regularly and having a significant crew out there. And that's kind of where we came with the decision that it just made sense now to do that. So obviously a really tough decision. Obviously everyone benefited from having that ability to have a crew out there, community and internally as well. So we're all going to feel that, and I don't want to diminish that decision either. And Brock, you could ask for a better person. So, but to answer your question, it doesn't. We just didn't see it coming back.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
so I found my numbers. So roughly for the first, if we do the deputy change, the 2 part-timers, we need about 18,000. But we're halfway through the year, so this year, but we'll have to find that for the next budget cycle. And if we do move on the sergeant, we have those dollars from STS, but what happens, that will work for the part of the salary, but when you pull, if we create a sergeant position, we have to add another deputy to fill that hole. So that's going to be a second add. So that's going to take about 114,000. So you got 124 if you round up is what's looking in the budget for 2022, just rough numbers.
Yeah, and Matt, can I just make maybe a clarifying statement? So the second add of the deputy is we'd hire 2 deputies, but the FTE count, if you count the 2 part-timers as 1,
Right.
the FTE count increase is actually 1.
Right.
So I just wanted to make
We
sure.
have to add another,
Yeah.
we have another.
yeah, but you're just backfilling.
Right, we're just backfilling.
Yeah. Well, I understand that concept. I'm not opposed to that at all. I think the the trick is always, where do we find the cash?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what your target date. I know you would like it tomorrow. But, I think for me, the public has a huge expectation of our law enforcement. I mean, when somebody's calling 911, they need somebody, and it's happening a lot. And, what I didn't know and what I learned in this was over the course of the last 3 years, law enforcement has changed dramatically. I don't know what the root cause is, if it's the media, all this stuff, the respect and all this, but people, it's just different. And the guys are getting chased around different than they used to be. It isn't just a burglary here and a burglary, people don't want to listen to them. Chases happen more often because they're not going to stop for them and things like that. So does that change in the future? I don't know. Are we just, is it just in there? I don't know that. But I do know the public expects service from us because they say, hey, we're paying taxes and I want somebody out there when I have a problem. I know that exists because I hear that a lot. So I would at least like to move the deputy today with the 2 part-timer at that body. And if we need more discussion on the sergeant and the lieutenant, we can do it. But
We've been pretty good at when we have a target and a good reason to get to that target, we've been pretty good about being able to hit it.
yeah,
So, appreciate the work you did on Jeff and informing us what's going on and what's needed, and I'll rely on that committee, does a lot of great work, so appreciate it.
it's a big chunk of money.
It is.
For us, that's a big chunk of money.
And so, Matt, just to clarify, at the personnel committee, the discussion or the consensus was to recommend moving forward with converting the 2 part-timers to a full-time and authorizing that recruitment. And then recommending the ending of the STS program effective the end of August.
Right.
And then to bring the sergeant discussion back to the personnel committee for a little more discussion. The way you just framed it up a couple of moments ago, it almost sounded like you were thinking you might recommend that as a change today. And so I just wanted to clarify.
Oh, no, I want it in the board's mind that
Okay.
get there, that's a big, we have our budget talks coming and all that, but the deputy is the thing I think we should move today. I personally think,
The STS.
the 2 part-timers.
I think we can do that.
Sorry if I wasn't clear on that.
So you're making a motion
I will make that motion to do that, yes.
and
To eliminate the 2 part-time positions and make that a full-time deputy position.
the STS, you want to do that together or separate?
I didn't hear that part.
The STS, you want to do that together or separate?
Yes, and eliminate the STS. That'll be a separate, I think, but I think we'll do that in a separate motion.
Okay, that's fine. I'll second the deputy deal.
Okay, so we got a motion for the 2 part-time deputies to change to a full-time deputy by Ludwig, seconded by Moore. Is there any discussion or questions on that? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed?
Yeah, and the reason I want a second, because I think that's a different discussion, it's a different, we're eliminating an employee there, so, I will also, now I'll move that. I expect there could be a lot of discussion there from people, I don't know, but I will also move to, end or terminate the STS position August 1st. Is that what we decided? Or
31st.
31st, yeah. And sorry. And, I will move that.
I'll second that one as well.
We got a motion by Ludwig, seconded by Moore. Are there questions or discussion on that?
I have a question.
Yes.
Are there any possibilities to place Brock someplace else?
We've made him well aware that we would put him anywhere that he would qualify and want to go.
Okay.
Rod Williamson has had more conversation with him than I have, but we both offered whatever we can do to help
Okay. I hate to lose good employees.
Yeah, and we had a lot of discussion about this in our committee because it'll be good for him to know too, instead of hanging out there. So I think we owe that to the employee too, so he can plan.
Well, and Jeff, I really appreciate the fact that you brought up that you talked to the judges and the probation officers and everybody else to find out what was going to happen with that. Because I was with Steve that, who knows what's going to happen next year when this is all over with. So thank you for bringing that up because that kind of clinched it, but yeah.
Thanks, Terry. I also think, Brock got promoted into this position. So just to cut him loose doesn't seem fair to anybody, I don't think. So I'm glad that you're working with him. If there's something that he can qualify for, he's not qualified to be the next sergeant or for the sheriff's department.
We had discussion about, again, where he could fit on the road, so that's up to him to decide what he wants to do. I think his license is lapsed, but again, I want to make it abundantly clear to everyone that it's absolutely nothing to do with his performance. He couldn't have done a better job with it. It's just the unfortunate circumstance for him. So I would put him to work anywhere.
Any other questions, discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Unanimous, Deb? I should be saying that every time, but. And then you're gonna further discuss the sergeant position. Is that how I remember?
Yes,
Okay.
and yes.
I don't hear any opposition for that move from the board. I didn't hear any today. If somebody has some questions and you're not comfortable today, talk to Matt or.
Yeah, we wanted to have that discussion too in front of us.
They need feedback. So if we think they're going down the wrong road, they need to know, they deserve to know sooner than later.
And Mr. Chair, if I could just add, I think that the challenge is if the decision is made to add the sergeant position, reduces decisions you can make for the rest of the budget for 2022.
Right.
That's the hard part.
That's the hard part
You
because
started to spend your money and so
it's 3/4 of 1% of our levy. Is that where we want to spend our chips, so to speak?
But it's hard because you understand the fact that each one of those crews having a sergeant there is,
Right.
it's,
I think I fully understand that. If you're a deputy in today's world, and it's, like Matt said, it's a fast-paced environment. And you need some help, and maybe it's advice that you need, and you're not getting any. You think about being a 25-year-old kid, the first time you've been in that particular situation. It'd be nice to have somebody.
but
Yeah,
yeah,
I think we can get there.
it would be good to see how it works into the budget.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the Economic Development Committee report.
Yeah, we had a meeting yesterday. We talked a lot about the American Rescue Plan. And we had some presentations from Pine Technical and Community College, Lakes and Pines. And, talked about some county priorities. So one of the things that came out of the Pine Tech deal was, they proposed kind of similar to what we did with the CARES Act funding, with the Work Fast and stuff like that. So they kind of gave us 3 proposals. One of them was the Work Fast, and it was pretty much mirrored, in these notes, it kind of talks a little bit about it. Pretty much mirrored what they did, funding, adding a few things, changing a few things around, that they found was working and a little bit more successful. And then they talked about some new stuff, which was business development. And that was kind of interesting where they have some HR stuff that they can help with businesses, some new hiring, business consulting, mental health, first aid, and incumbent working. So, and I thought the incumbent working thing was interesting where they, you could get a voucher. So if you own a business and you need, let's just say Ascot or something, where they're looking for a welder, they can get a voucher to hire somebody and then go get trained in, on how to do that. And they're adding construction, some construction carpentry and stuff, this fall, they said, so they're pretty excited about that, which is another, a lot of, and we always say all our residents go to the cities and work, which is not a bad thing. But some of the guys around here, I know the guys that are working on my house, he's like, I can't find people to work, so if you can get some of these people somewhat trained in, so they don't have to hire them real green, and get them on, maybe they'll stick around a little bit too. And it's not bad, like we've talked, if they have to commute somewhere to go to work, they live here, so that's the big thing. But to try to help our businesses, that was idea number 2. And then they talked, I was actually really excited about this one too. All of their stuff always is really good. They call it the Pine County College Initiative. With this, it would mirror, the Franzen, what Dennis Franzen's doing down in the Pine City area. It'd mirror it for the whole county. And they told us yesterday that we would be the first county in Minnesota, possibly even a greater area, but they just know Hart, Minnesota, that would offer up to 2 years of a college scholarship for free to graduating students through the whole county. So, and the way Sean talked about it yesterday is it's the last, so they try to exhaust everything. So when you go there, if you qualify for the grants, everything like that, and you would just make up that last gap. So it can vary a little bit, but, so it's not always the full scholarship. It's not always $1,000, maybe it's a couple $100, maybe it's 3,000.
What's it based on?
Just when.
Based on that, you live in Pine County.
Yeah,
That's it.
yep. And you're graduating, what did we say, like 20 or 21 or 22?
We had conversation that it will be open to graduates 2020, 2021, and 2022. And Wendy Wahlberg from the college is here to speak to the board or answer any questions if you want any detail on the program or the proposal.
And the reason we're kind of talking about this one so quite a bit right now is if we're gonna we're a little bit behind. They all graduated, and all that stuff. So we'd like to make a move, at least on this part today. They attached dollar figures to it all, so it'd be roughly, what was it,
The total cost for the program is $465,000, and the Pine County ask is for $215,000, and college is going to put in the balance.
It was it? No, that might be, because wasn't it 700 and some?
How much was
I
it?
think the total of the other programs.
15.
250?
Okay.
Just the scholarship program.
Yep. Yeah.
That was just a scholarship, but all 3 of these together.
Oh,
was-
all 3 was like $460,000.
Yeah. So
A Pine County share?
a Pine County share, the whole total package add 250 to that. Because Pine Tech is going to contribute about 250,000. And it was like wasn't it like 790 or something like that? Did you write the total number down?
I had just the 459, which.
Yeah. 709. Okay. All right. So that, yeah.
And this is all relying on the Overhead Recovery Act dollars,
Yep.
Yes.
no levy dollars.
No.
And so when the Recovery Act's a one-shot deal,
Yes.
unless we can find some other Recovery Act money down the line.
Right. And so we had conversation of all those programs that Josh outlined yesterday. And then the consensus of the committee was, since the board was meeting today, and it's very timely if the board likes the tuition assistance piece of it, that if the college knew that sooner than later, they could be reaching out to the recent grads now, right? When they're trying to figure out what their, if they don't have plans now for school. And then we also talked about, because of the pandemic, there were a number of students who graduated last year who maybe didn't get to do what they thought they were going to do because of the pandemic. They didn't go to college that they had planned, or they're not able to get a good job because of the job market right now. And so this would be an opportunity to catch those students up who have not landed yet and want to go and get a 2-year technical degree.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if they don't have, I'm assuming that this amount of money is for the maximum students that they figured that they would get, correct? So if they figured that they'd get 100 students and they only get 50, is that going to cut our share? And
Yes.
so it's not necessarily going to be 215, it could be less.
Correct. And it's estimated on 45 students starting this fall, and 35 of those 45 continuing to their second year, and 60 students starting in 2022, and 46 of those continuing to the next year. And so the total number served is 105, and that is a best guesstimate. And so if they hit that limit and they run out of county funding, I think the college will need to figure out either it's first come, first serve and you're done, or they come up with some other money, or they're estimating, like Josh was explaining, this is the last dollar. And so they estimate an amount of money per student, but each student's situation is different. So for one, it might be $3,000. For another, it might be $1,000 that this program would contribute.
And, Mr. Chair, Josh had another point he made yesterday, great point you made, that there's also the townships and city portions of this that I don't know if they've been contacted, if they would be willing to.
One of the things we're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah.
That was a very good point, Josh.
Yeah, and that was the other thing too, because we did talk about it. I don't remember, was that you, JJ, that brought it up about offering it to everybody, not just graduates? But we were thinking we would just start at least with the graduates. It would be real exciting. And I kind of thought we were talking about the whole program today, all three things to move on, but maybe not. But it is, the scholarship piece was one I was very excited about to hear and see about it. And the other thing, like JJ said, is the county or the cities and townships are gonna have like 3 million stuff too. And we're talking about maybe if it's in a certain township and the township wanted to kick in to help offset, a little bit. So that was another thing we were talking about, and we're gonna have them discussions.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So, this might be a silly question, but let's say we block these dollars in and it's sitting there. And what if they get 50 students? And is there a way to, what happens to the dollars? They come back, or are they, okay.
Yeah, and we had a pretty simple agreement with the college on the Work Fast program that I think addressed all of those kinds of issues, and I would contemplate we would do the same type of thing if the county wanted to authorize the program. We draft a written agreement that would spell that out.
Is there any reason not to just do,
All of it?
that's what I was thinking today, and then that piece is done? Or do we just worry about the scholarship or do it all? Okay.
And I just do not have in front of me and the total dollar amount. I know it was like 460-ish. 459.
450. So I would make a motion with the Pine Tech and Community College, 3, the Work Fast, the business, and the scholarship, for a total of $459,000. So I'll make that motion.
Does the motion need to say that it's coming from the ARP money?
It should say that it's coming from the American Rescue Plan Act funds.
Okay.
And it could say that the county attorney is requested to draft an agreement and authorize the county administrator to sign. And we could expedite that if that were agreeable.
Perfect. Did you get that, Deb?
Working on it. I'll second that motion.
Okay, we got a motion for 459,000 to go forward with the programs, as they were submitted, to Work Fast program, scholarship program, and, anyway.
Business development.
Business development program. Thank you. So, is there any questions?
I have one, Mr.
Yes.
Does that go through 2023? Is that what I'm getting or?
Yes, and the agreement with the college would reference the December 31st, 2024 date that the federal law does, just to give flexibility if there are remaining.
That's what I was worried about. So if something comes back or whatever, was there, and then I have one, is there any discussion where if the dollars are there, they could increase funding per student versus if it's income based or whatever, you know?
Well,
How does that work?
the maximum they can get is the maximum it costs to go to
Right.
college.
Right.
So that's,
If somewhere gonna get less, I didn't understand that part.
yeah.
Sure.
If you got a Pell Grant, let's say,
Oh, okay, I got it. Then I got it.
that-
Okay,
that comes off the
missed
top.
that. Sorry.
If you got a scholarship from the
I got it.
First National Bank, that comes off.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, and so Sean Reynolds was at the meeting yesterday. And works with the financial aid piece for the college. And that's exactly what he explained is if you're interested in the program, you apply. And then all of your other sources of tuition are factored in. And then there's that gap. And that gap is what this money would be used to fill.
That's why I was making sure we weren't doubling up. That's all I was hearing.
And that's why that was really cool when he talked about that.
Yeah.
He's like, I sit down with them all and we go through and exhaust everything we can until we hit this. And
I think that's awesome.
I got one other thing, but I'm gonna wait till we vote on this and then I'll muddy the water with something.
I do have one question, just, do we give them the full amount of money right now, or do we give it to them some each year, or?
We would likely give it to them in 2 payments over 2 years because we get the money, half of it this year and half of it next year.
Okay,
So just remember, we got a finite amount of money.
Right.
We got 5.3 million roughly. So now we got 4.9 million. So it's still a lot of money, but we only get to spend it once.
right.
So we got a motion and a second. Any questions? If not, all in favor say aye.
I,
Opposed? Okay,
Thank
Now-
you for working so hard on this.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you to the college for everything you guys do.
I have one more, have a discussion with guys like David and stuff and threw something out to me that might not be the dumbest idea. And certainly Pine Tech would help figure this out, but as we look at recruiting and retaining employees, should we look at somehow coming up with a scholarship that would say, if you want to go to law enforcement training, we'll help you. We'll get our fair share that will come back to Pine County. But at some point, I'm worried down the road that we're not going to be able to fill those positions. And what do we do when we go to the cupboard and the cupboard is bare? And so I just throw that out there and I'm looking at Terry, at some point is the qualified number of probation agents going to deplete? Is child protection agents, are we going to run out of them? Should we start figuring out how we're going to keep that pool full of people?
I don't know the answer to that, but how do you pick which program you support? You know,
Well,
heavy equipment?
We don't have a lot of those programs within Pine County that require a college degree. but law enforcement's one of them. And so that's where my mind went.
It's a good thought.
So you guys on personnel and economic development, maybe want to think about that.
And I'm not done here, so.
Oh, good grief.
So we just wanted to get that one out of the way.
Okay.
So the next thing we did talk about was Lakes and Pines was there, and they did talk a lot about housing rehab, owner occupied rental, commercial, properties. So they had talked about, just doing some stuff, like the small cities grants that got where they can help. As long as you plan on staying there 10 years, they'll forgive 10% of the loan every year. So it's because like we had talked, most of us have heard the Ben Winchester, deal about housing. There's a big housing issue going on in the whole country right now, but like the housing stock isn't, the number of units isn't necessarily the problem. It's the quality of the units that might be the problem. So is it better to redo some of these, fix them up so they last longer and are available, or build new? Well, it's obviously better to rehab them. There was a lot of questions around that, that whole program that she was talking about. And we were gonna bring it back to have some more discussion about it, but she said, she could easily take $3 million and do a lot of stuff, but we weren't obviously looking at doing that yesterday. So, we're gonna have a lot more, discussion on it. And then we did talk about, county priorities and, just other projects, community input. I don't know, do you have anything else to add, JJ? We talked about the HRA. Oh, the big thing, township. There we go. That's where I was trying to get at. We have a meeting tomorrow or tonight with townships regarding the American Rescue Plan. So part of the stuff we were talking about is if we did something with Lakes and Pines or Pine Tech, is it possible, like, Brook Park Township or the city of Brook Park, if you're a resident there, if they could take some of their dollars and pay for some of that stuff, however, so we want to have that discussion with the townships and the cities to maybe utilize some of their money and or the housing project, if it's in their township or their city. Because a lot of times when they get this money, they have no way or means how to spend it. And we talked to Kelly a little bit about, we would be the main contact, and then we could reach out to said township and say, hey, we have this applicant, all our money can go a little further if you guys want to take some of yours and put towards it or whatever. So, we'll have them conversations. They wouldn't have to administer it or anything. They would just have to pay the county back on some of it, or.
Yeah, they're closer to their own people too. They
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah. And then.
The closer government gets to the people, the better it is, I think.
Yep. And then I just think it would be a good partnership, and then everybody's kind of involved, and then the money doesn't get, sent back, or, because most townships, if they get whatever, $100,000, but it's gotta fit this criteria, they just aren't gonna go through and try to navigate that. So if it's all navigated, all done, they just gotta send it somewhere. How that works, I have no clue, but that's Kelly's job, I guess. So that was part of that, discussion.
You're out of money now.
Oh, we just added over 3 million. Then, so,
Mr. Chair, just to give a little perspective, I think we're going to find out tonight what the cities and townships are thinking, which I think is very important. To the extent we can be of assistance, we certainly want to help them, but they do have their own processes with the state, where we got our money direct from the federal government. They will all get their money running through the state of Minnesota, so it's a different process. And then the median amount of money that the cities and townships are receiving is $50,000. That means half of them are getting less than 50,000. Many of them are getting 10 or 20 or maybe $30,000. So it really isn't a whole lot of money.
Yeah.
Right? And so the biggest jurisdictions are getting $200,000 or $300,000. The Pine Cities, the Pine City Townships, Windermere Township, they're getting a couple $100,000-ish dollars. So they don't have near the total amount that we have either. And so I think there are a couple of points that Josh makes that are maybe helpful, right, to the townships, that if they don't have the capacity to stand up a program to spend $10,000, we could work with them to fit them into things we're doing and try to benefit that township directly. Maybe a housing rehab in their township that Lakes and Pines administers, that that township can put some money to. And then they may also have an easy way to spend $10,000 or $200,000, right? The city of whomever, they may need a lift station upgrade. That's $100,000. Well, if you're that city, that might be the best and most effective use of that money. So it's hard. I mean, it's good to dream, but it's hard to have that conversation until after we get some feedback, which will happen tonight. But I guess our message would be, we want to help to the extent we can. If you need help spending your money, we can help figure out ways to leverage it back to your township without having to have you invest a lot of administrative capacity. That made sense.
Yep.
And I don't know, did you have anything else, DJ, that you want?
No, just, it's nice to just give the local government, the opportunity to help out or get involved, or like you said, local government is closer the better. They may know something that we don't know.
And I think that was about it. But I don't have no any other thing to vote on or anything, so.
And if I could maybe add one more comment, the committee reached no consensus on funding levels for different programs, but Steve, I think this was your point. There's only so much money. I think the committee's commitment was to meet again next month, and at that time, start to put some parameters of how much money in each category. How much will we spend in broadband? How much will we spend in housing rehab? And see what that looks like.
Yeah, I think and then we certainly don't want to spend all 5 million in the first 6 months. Because maybe a year from now, somebody will be here with the best program since sliced bread, and we'll go, oh, why didn't we think of that?
That was our lesson, my lesson from the CARES Act, is the contingency amount we had was not nearly enough to account for what maybe were better ideas further down the road that came.
Exactly. Yeah, we learned so much through that one, right? But it worked.
Yep. And I think maybe in defense of the decision on the training with the college, one thing we learned is that Work Fast program was very successful.
Yes.
Right?
That was 100 and some students, right?
I think it was just about, yeah.
Nice.
104? That's what I thought, yeah.
That's awesome.
That was awesome. That must have been a long meeting.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for
That's awesome.
getting in there. That's gonna be a busy committee.
Tell our colleagues back at Pine Tech, thanks for the work on that. Probation comprehensive plan.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Terry Foster, the probation director. Just heard Commissioner Allen talk about the best program since sliced bread. I thought that was my introduction. Try to be serious for. So new commissioners, I give an annual report on what's going on in my department. And it's mostly Really good. To be serious about staff before I even start. August, so 2 months from now, it will have been 4 years until I've had a backfill position in the probation department. We've added one position. We haven't had any new hires in 4 years there to replace somebody else. And so hopefully that speaks a little bit about me, but I think it speaks more about the county and a great place to be. You know, when we did that the comp study several years ago.
Oh, the comparable worth class and comp study.
You know, it's, Pine County has really become a really nice place to work and I know the probation officers value it. And I think you see that in them sticking around. So I'll start with that. This is our mission thing. This was revised a year ago. I'll just highlight it with the 2 new commissioners. Pine County's probation's mission under the direction of the 10th Judicial District and Pine County's develop, provide, and promote effective probation services that contribute to a safer community. So that's what we hope to accomplish. Some highlights this year. Some things I always try to change this up and talk about the good things that have been going on. Our Project Rise, our juvenile work, and we'll talk about that more here shortly, but this comprises a lot of different people from the county that work together to try to make life better for kids and work with them differently, how to break that school to prison pipeline. South Reese, Superintendent Almost, have been consulted by several different statewide jurisdictions, whether that's been county folks or school folks or attorneys or combination of all of them have reached out to us to see what we did and how we did it and to see if they could implement it in their jurisdiction. So that's been nice to hear. Reese and I recently presented at the statewide MCA MACPO Juvenile Justice Conference, really on that Project Rise stuff. I was recently elected to the American Probation and Parole Association Board of Directors, so my time on the MACPO Board of Directors is coming to a close this month as the past president and the chair of the Directors Committee, but now I'll be more active on the National Committee. And then one of my senior agents is on the MACPO Board of Directors. She was elected as the secretary, which carries some weight in terms of some voting stuff. So that is important, I think, for Pine County as well. One of the slides I don't have here, and I know you were all given a copy of the bound copy, and that has a lot more narrative and data and stuff in there. But I just kind of want to highlight who's actually on the committee, on my advisory board. Sergeant Overson from the Sheriff's Department, Brent from the jail, County Attorney Frederickson, the judges, Superintendent Almost represents education, Jamie from my office, Randy Tangy from the State Probation Department, Cal Mateen is a caseworker from MCF Moose Lake, Beth Jarvis from Social Services, Sheena Matrius from the Mille Lacs Band, Jocelyn Ryberg from District 1, Chair Weimer, Amanda Weimer from District 2, Representative Nathan Nelson, District 3, Connie Mickrit, District 4, and Mark Diggin, District 5. So really proud of that advisory board. It changes periodically, but this is a pretty good group and really nice to have a state legislator on there as well. New offender entries on probation. So our numbers, you can look from 2019 to 20 decline. A couple things to say about this. This is a snapshot at the end of December about who's actually on probation at that time. It's a report that the DOC runs. So it looks like it declined, and it did, and COVID related as well. But what you should know is that it's an actual, just a number on the probation cases on that day, and it does not count adult or juvenile pretrial. We have a enormous adult pretrial caseload in Pine County. The DOC doesn't count that. They don't count diversion, truancy, restorative justice, or juvenile petty and traffic offenders. So all those numbers that are additional to our workload are excluded by the DOC when they run that number. So we'll talk about the politics in that as we go forward. But feel free to stop me at any point. So offender entries, this is just the graph that goes with that. Offenders by case type, gross misdemeanor, and juvenile. So if you're wondering where the felons are, for the new commissioners. Those are handled by the Department of Corrections down the street. We handle felony supervision on the juvenile side as well as the pretrial cases. Say some of those will end up on felony supervision. We had 162 gross misdemeanors this year, 144 misdemeanor and 37 juveniles. So juvenile numbers have declined here steadily since 2017. Doesn't always necessarily translate to decreased workload, however, with that population. Some demographics, there's a 20% increase in pretrial conditional release supervision cases, which is indicative of a delay in court process to resolve cases due to COVID-19. And repeat DWI and drug offenses continue to be the top case type. Drug offenders have nearly doubled since 2011. So that's probably nothing that the sheriff doesn't feel on a daily basis. That's where we spend most of our time. I guess if there was a positive stat here in 2020, at least in our office, this is, again, doesn't count the felons, but no sex offenses in our department. Corrections fees are important by statute. They can't supplant a current program, but we do a significant amount of collecting and what we do with that money. So we collected $67,000 this last year, which includes revenue recapture money. And that fees or supervision fees on clients. It's revenue generated by programs that we delivered in-house, such as College Skills, Driving with Care 2, LEAD, which is our first-time DWI program. And then we also deliver domestic violence impact panel. Don't charge a cost to that one. This slide here tells you exactly where that money is gone. So we collect over $38,000 in supervision fees, over $8,000 in pretrial fees, and then REAM, UA fees. That's they're positive they have to pay, so it's $228 there. Those numbers matter. They essentially pay for a position in our department. So the agents have done a terrific job of staying on top of clients for that. Auto home placement, I give a different report every year on the auto home placement. I'll just touch on this now. 2020, it went down to $185,000. Again, you know, some of that we think is COVID related. Some of that is good probation work. Average length of placement was 47 days last year. 14 juveniles were placed in 30 placements and 3 budget busters, which accounted for 68% of dollars spent, or $125,000 of the budget. We continue to use electronic monitoring as much as possible in the juvenile department, and as well as our evening reporting center, which I'll touch on here a little bit as we go along. And there's just, again, some graphs that go with that. The number of these placements of 30 and number of juveniles of 14 placed are about half of what they were in 19. And the lowest since Pine County Probation started tracking this data since 1996. So certainly there is a reduction in placements in Pine County that we believe are not just because of COVID. C5 is our restorative justice program for juveniles. And stats here we're pretty proud of, 72 referrals here. It's 16. Ten were referred but didn't start the program. Give it a minute. 59 completed it and 3 were unsuccessful.
So on that C5?
Yeah.
Do you have an idea of the impact that's had on your placements? You know,
That's a good question. We hope to deliver data this coming year about an evening reporting center, which is an opportunity to try to keep kids local without having to send them out.
Yeah, right.
I don't know that correlation between the C5.
Yeah, just.
But.
Yeah, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I just thought maybe you'd have an idea. It must have some impact.
Anecdotally, I would tell you that it's like anything else, right? The more intensively you work with a kid, the better opportunity you have that you're successful with them. And I think that's what our data shows here with C5 is we've had, only a few kids that have recidivated, in the look back period, which is a year, on that population. And we would like to hope, or believe that that's because we're spending more time with them. We're kind of being wraparound services with them. It's usually like if it's a kid from East Central, for example, the principal will work these cases with me. So there's not just me talking to them. If it's a native kid, we have somebody from the Mille Lacs band working with me. And there's evidence-based practices that we know that says that if you have that level of impact on a child, it's going to make a difference, right?
Right.
It's like a positive mentor in somebody's life, showing you care about them. Maybe they'll stay out of the system. Doesn't work for everybody. I just read a report a couple days ago of one of my very recent clients which was an assault. And now I think she's racked up a couple of pending assaults since she completed with me. So
What do you have to do to not complete? Do they just not show up for all of it, or?
yeah, we try to work with them. So if they're a pre-charge diversion case, they come to me directly. And then, I can schedule them in my time. We've done a lot of them virtually, obviously, over the last year. But if they're on probation, then their probation officer kind of works with me and sets up the time. I'd like to work with them and try to get them through. Sometimes they'll miss, have to reschedule their kids, right? And so sometimes there's those headaches to work through. Really, one of the bigger things that gets them to not complete is the commission of the same or similar offense. So if like the one, for example, if you're on for assault in a school and I'm working with you and then you commit another assault in a school and I tell them this, then this next time around, you're going to get prosecuted by the county attorney's office and you're going to go see a judge. Now, they might get re-referred to me. That's happened, right? But this way, now they have to see the judge and there's a consequence of an placement, that type of thing. And so we have re-referred some kids as well. We have a really great relationship with the assistant county attorney that works with juveniles. And so we staff cases. Sometimes, Terry, do you think we should bring this one? Is it okay to maybe send this one through diversion? Which is politically, I'll just make a statement for a minute. When the DOC doesn't count diversion, for example, as part of their formula for funding.
Yeah.
So this is why these things drive me up the wall, is because you got the whole goal of working with a kid in diversion so the kid doesn't become somebody put on probation, because once you're in the system, you have a harder time getting out of the system, yet you don't count those numbers, right? Which is why I've always appreciated Commissioner Howland understanding the value of working harder with kids on the front end. Which is why the jurisdictions now have said, what is Pine County doing with this Project Rise stuff? Because they're trying to work harder on the front end. And so that's where that relationship between the county attorney's office and myself, I think, is advantageous, where we can talk those through and say, this might be a difficult case, but Terry, are you okay with trying this kid on diversion? Because, and we do. And most times it's successful, right? But I also know that if it's not, or if there's any type of behavior that's related to what they're coming to me on, I let the kid know right away. You're going to go and you're going to get charged and you're going to go through the traditional criminal justice system. So, that answer your question?
Sounds like a really good program. Yes.
So recidivism, so we had 7 since 2016. That recidivated overall. So, and then 53 that have completed the program. So, I've done not as good a job apparently in the last few years, but 7 is still pretty good. Here's our participant type. Okay, what's the note done on this? A lot of property offenders, person offenses, pre-charge, diversion, then it's broken out, male, female, we break it out by race. So here's that slide. It takes an average of 97 days to complete the program. I like that number. It was 90, it's went up now to 97, but I've always said, when kids ask me, how long does it take to complete the program? I always tell them it's up to you. But in the back of my mind, I always think, you know what, we should try to right-size the program. If a kid's done well and they've completed it, we should move them on. Where I've been involved in other programs that sometimes keep the kids on longer because they need to justify a program. Well, I got another job, so I don't need to keep a kid on. If the kid's doing well, let's move them on. And so I think that's why ours is 97 days, 13% recidivism rate. That was 7 at one point. EJJ are extended juvenile jurisdiction, kids that have had prison time hanging over their head. They went to a placement, transitioned back in the community. We worked with 3 of them. 1 of the 3 recidivated. I will say they recidivated, but with a lot less charge than they went in placement for. So I still look at that as somewhat of a success. Those were pretty bad cases a couple years ago here in Clay County. 75% male, 39% 50% person, and 65% pre-charge diversion. So 65% are coming to me, trying to work with them so they don't have to be put on traditional probation. This restitution I'm proud of. We've had $6,200 owed in restitution, which is obviously hard for kids to pay. And we've had 2561 paid in full, 6 of 10 have paid in full. We just have 4 that have some outstanding that they get a letter from you. Truancy. Truancy's done really well during the pandemic. I can tell you that my job will be a nightmare. I deal with the truants, habitual truants, and that 22 in 2019 down to 7. We're going to be up to 22 or more here coming in the fall because people are going to start to file again and so forth. But why we're different, this is where I really love our Project Rise work. Some things that we have done, continue to do. We recommended payment of driver's training as an incentive for habitual truants who can show academic progress. So I have 2 kids I'm working on right now. One of them is essentially raising herself. She cried in the court hearing online because she couldn't believe that somebody would actually think about helping her get her driver's license. The kid's got a job. And so we got her set up at Empower, and Empower /YEARD has done a lot in terms of how much schoolwork you produce versus how many days you show up. And so we have bought gas cards. And so if she can show that she's went to class, she can then come by the office, give her a gas card and try to help her that way. So what has she done in return? She's went to school and she's succeeding. Well, she's not out of the woods yet, but as you notice, I can put show academic progress. I didn't put on there yet that she get a high school diploma. That's the end goal. But I just emailed her, texted her maybe 2 weeks ago and said, if you want to get signed up for driver's ed, go ahead and do it and we'll take care of that for you. Because it's a barrier. She can't drive at the moment, you know, but here's a kid who's trying her tail off, and at her last court hearing, she wasn't at. But Judge Wynn found out where she was working, and Judge Wynn was gonna pay a visit at that gas station. That's just the extra stuff that you see from our judges as well. This second one was cool. Youth was sullen during the virtual court review hearing until the end of the hearing, when the judge asked the youth to see her new puppy. Judge then showed her dog to the youth, and the 2 talked about their pets, which completely changed the youth's tone and attitude. And our truancy court lends to a more personal approach. That stuff matters. You can go to a 5-minute truancy court someplace else in the state and it's stale, and you have 3 seconds to tell them what you're thinking or whatever, or you can sit around a table. We'll get back to that in the fall, where you have maybe 5, 6 professionals and family members that sit there and talk with a kid, not at them, and it makes a difference. So that's the cool stuff in Pine. So this one here, this data reflects the use of a graduated response grid from 2019 to 20. There are 40 probation violations from 2019 to 20. So graduated response is also part of our Project Rise work. This was developed in part by the assistant county attorney and one of my career agents. And so when we violate somebody, we take a look at like the violation levels. So 46% were moderate violation levels and 46%, almost 47% serious violation levels. The risk level was high when the probation officer did a violation. what was the response? Well, we recommended, whatever we recommended in accordance with the response grid, was 100%, and then the outcome was 96.88%. So meaning that the court followed the probation officer's recommendation 97% of the time. So that tells us that our recommendations are evidence-based, they're along the continuum of what we should be recommending, and that judges are following those recommendations. So this was some good work that was done, and we continue to follow this. And so what might happen in some other jurisdictions, sometimes in larger jurisdictions, is you might get a probation officer or even a judge that might be heavy-handed, and we can measure that, right? Do we recommend low or moderate recommendations, and did the judge come down and send them out of home, for example? Earlier in my career, that used to happen in Duluth quite a bit, but.
Do you usually work with one judge or do you work with all of the judges?
Yeah, in the juvenile world, it's all of them. Some of our Project Rise work in terms of the habitual truants is mostly one judge, mostly judgment.
Okay.
Evening Reporting Center, so this is a grant, $313,000 grant. Initially, we did get this continued additional 2 years to September 30th of 2023, which is an additional award of $166,000. Earned Justice Assistant Grant, Reese and Andy Almos and Sherry Johnson helped write that as well. We have a director and a youth counselor in these positions right now that in their day job, they both work with emotional and behavioral disordered kids. And so they're a perfect fit in running our ERC, and they're just doing a tremendous job. We're currently at capacity of 10 clients. And then next year, looking into next year, we look at having some outcomes that we were able to report. We've had 15 kids in the program since we started. It's just kind of a look at some of the things that they've been doing. And lately, I think every Friday now they're going to Changing Gates, working with the horses. I know they did paintball recently, and of course they have curriculum stuff that they work on too. Our curriculum that we use is called What Got Me Here. And so, I have one of my habitual truants in here. This kid is thriving in the Evening Reporting Center, in part because he was a distance learning kid. And then he didn't go to school like he should, so we had a court order that he had to turn in his gaming system to me. So the gaming system is in my office. I don't know how to play it, otherwise I might.
You'd take down his level, he'd be mad at you.
He is thriving in Eager Reporting Center in part because he gets to be around other kids. He gets to do pro-social things that he hasn't done before, hasn't been exposed to. And then so now he's working like mad. So by the end of the summer, he can get his gaming system back. So this is this is actually the one that was developed in part by the career agent attorney. So this one this is called a risk assessment instrument. This looks like a kid appears in court for the first time. Should he remain in custody? Should he go back to the East Central Regional Juvenile Center, or should he be released? We had 12% released, or 12% that were actually detained, so 17 were released. 5 had said detention alternative, which mostly is the monitor. 15 or more points to detain, and then total sample, so 22, and then 4 remained in custody. So of some type. Again, this kind of goes in when we talk about our usage of the East Central Regional Juvenile Center. Again, this is evidence-based. I know we have juvenile agents that only recommend that a kid stay in custody if he truly needs to be in custody. Some of the reasons for override, why they might stay in custody, is parents unable to control them, or their danger of herself, serious drug issue, or non-compliant, maybe on the GPS monitor, flight risk, self-harm, again, maybe they took firearms from the caregiver, and that type of thing. In all override cases, the court ordered that juvenile could be moved to non-secure when a bed has become available. We would like to use more non-secure beds than secure beds in Pine County. And that's just kind of what I read here. The county attorney's office is, they do a good job too of understanding that, you know, kids should only be detained. You know, and I've probably said this before, but maybe for the two new commissioners, you know, when I started in this business, when I first became a juvenile supervisor in Duluth, you could get a probation officer mad at 3 o'clock on Friday, and he'd lock a kid up at the Arrowhead Juvenile Center and keep him there until Monday morning and then take him out. It did absolutely nothing for the kid. But it made the PO be able to have a good weekend without getting any phone calls and being bothered, and then they'd let them out on Monday. There used to be programs or short-term kitchen programs at the Arrowhead Juvenile Center. Have a kid work in the kitchen for 3 days or 5 days. There's nothing evidence-based about that at all. But that's what we used to do with kids when we started in this business. And now just yesterday, you may or may not have heard, Woodland Hills in Duluth, built on July 2nd. Woodland Hills has been around for over 100 years. That tells you not only the issue about where we're going to place kids if a kid has to be placed in the future, but just that more and more counties are going away from actually placing kids. They had 35 kids as of yesterday and 99 staff. Do the math, it's not going to work. You can't keep a facility open. There's more and more need for, again, for the non-secure population, as well as the kids with significant mental health. Electronic monitoring, again, this is a detention alternative. This will actually be moved into my budget next year. We're really proud of this statistic. Saved $101,000 on inflation costs this year. It only costs us $5,000 to put a kid on the monitor. 13 kids spent 415 days on EM. And since 2009, over $1.5 million in placement costs have been saved by the use of EM. ISP program, that's our intensive supervision. It's our repeat DWI population. Pretty proud of this. At a recent management team meeting several months ago, to be honest with you, my two agents that work this caseload, I was thinking really hard about discontinuing ISP in Pine County. Not because it didn't work. You see our statistics say it worked. But it's very labor intensive, right? They're put on different phases. And if you're on a certain phase, the agent's out in the street more often and just takes more time and energy. And usually these people, we have drinking over and over and over again. But historically, 89% of those who have started the program have not committed a new DWI. No current clients have been arrested for new DWI. It saved the county $262,000 in jail costs in 2020. It's generated $94,000 in revenue. 2020, 12% had some type of sanction, either formal or informal. 23% had a formal violation, and 47% were enrolled in ignition interlock. And then that savings with jail is calculated on the bottom there. But, one of the things on that, you know, when the agents gave that presentation, the management team, one of the big drivers on why I kept them, those was the county attorney had made a comment in there about, you know, I'm paraphrasing, Reese, help me out here if I struggle. How do you know really about the lives that you saved by having that program, right? We only know about statistics if somebody violates or whatever, and we can measure it. But what about the people that are driving down I-35 that didn't get an alcohol accident or whatever because they've had very close supervision by a probation agent? They've had CD counselors working in collaboration with probation agents and so forth. And that really hit home to me. And you can thank Reese for me keeping that program around because it meant something to me and it meant something to the agents that he's right? You can't just do everything by numbers because then you forget some of this anecdotal stuff that is obviously right and it makes a lot of sense. Our pretrial caseload, this is, if we have any type of stress in our department, this is where it comes from. 455 bail evaluations were completed in 2020, equivalent to 683 hours or 33% of an agent's time. That doesn't even include one field visit. This caseload includes high risk and pending felony level offenders. There's a formula that's done. We just got the recent numbers. Pine County is currently one position down on the CPO new position formula. you know, down the road, if we ever looked at another position, that's obviously where it would need to be is in the pretrial caseload. So, when we do pretrial supervision now, so there's 1.5 agents that do this. That half agent does half-time ISP. They do it on moderate to high-risk offenders, you know, during COVID too, it's especially, we don't go out and see the low-risk cases. We just spend our time going to the houses of the moderate to high-risk, which is an evidence-based practice. Of the reports last year, 48% had actually ended up on supervision to us. So not everybody that we do a bail eval and spend time with ends up on supervision with us. Outcomes, 44% had some type of formal violation filed. Even though this last year we were in COVID, 25% still missing court hearings. 26% are arrested on new charges and 22% were arrested or tested positive for drug development. I'm surprised that number is not higher, to be honest with you, based on COVID and being at home. Demographics, 11% native, 47% live 11 to 40 miles from the courthouse, 56% unemployed, 44% identified problematic chemical use. COG skills is an evidence-based program. I think 4 times a week our agents run COG skills programs, working on thinking errors with clients. The biggest part I'm very proud of, we do it's called Decision Points, which is kind of a big statewide curriculum right now. When COVID started, Decision Points had never been delivered virtually. In fact, the authors of the program didn't know how to do that. Pine County did it first and introduced it to the authors of the program, which I'm very proud of. And so, Little Pine County sometimes gets some national exposure for some very good reasons, because there's some very talented agents that think outside the box of getting stuff done, and we still have to deliver services. And I guess if you look at a good part of that, we have less clients missing COG skills because they have that virtual option now versus having to drive into the courthouse.
Are you going to continue doing that?
Pardon me?
Are you going to continue doing that?
Yeah, I think so. I think the virtual option will be, in fact, as we speak, we have a staff meeting tomorrow. One of the things I'm going to hopefully write into our supervision categories and probation is virtual supervision. So we should never get rid of supervising clients at some level virtually. And that might be an example of good use of virtual supervision, is having a person attend virtually if that's the only way they can get in that week, for example. 69% were referred but didn't complete. They had no new offense of any type. 92% completed the program. Offense of any type, so they may have, or no offense of any type. So we have no new offense of any type, and then same or similar. So we had 100% complete COG skills, and nobody had a same or similar offense of an alcohol related or of the crime that they were referred to COG skills on. So there's some good outcomes and good work that's being done there. LEAD is our first time DWI program. I won't spend much time here. Two of the presenters of that program are in here. Reese and the sheriff will present on that. We do this 4 times a year. This will be our first time we do probably that hybrid option, do in-person and virtual. 284 adults and 6 youth have completed the program. We don't really have kids that are court ordered to this program. We offer it as an option. So if somebody has a kid that they're concerned about and they want to have them come into the program with them, we'll allow them into that day program. And then we'll cut the adults $100 fee to $50 by introducing this to their kids, with the theory of trying to prevent their kids from some of the behaviors of their parents. This has been really well. We've had like 45 this last year, nobody recidivated. We had 2019, we had 1 person recidivate with a new DWI offense. And then it's been 2017 since we've had a few clients, since it's been measured about look back of a couple of years. So In 2018, we had none of them. So that's good. So you measure this program, then you measure it against our Driving with Care Level 2 program, which is usually our repeat DWI offenders. Are we getting some of these people, you know, it wouldn't be worth the sheriff time, for example, to give a presentation and then have all these people reoffend and end up in our other program, right? Then why have this program? But these numbers still suggest that this program is working for the most people. Driving with Care Level 2, again, 86% completion rate. 2020 had 10 people complete out of 13. Percentage of participants in no DWI offenses from 2017 to 19. So, looking back at 2019, 100%. So everybody's as a new repeat DWI offender in the last year and a half, based on that data. Just the last few things, evidence-based practice of progress. PATHS is another restorative justice program. We implemented that in 2020. I'm very hopeful that we can get back to, we do this in collaboration with the federal prison. Since we were booted out of there and hopefully we'll be back in there soon. They didn't have a virtual option there at the prison. But this is more of a circle process, restorative justice with the kids, where the inmates actually work with me, with the kids. Reese and I went there and trained 20-some inmates a few years ago. It's really, really cool. And I really hope to have some good data on that a few years down the road here. We can get this back up and running. Just some pictures here. Might be a little bit difficult to see. You know, the cultural community coach, as most of you know anyway, that's been moved to the collaborative. So in that, for that position now, the Pine County Children's Cabinet versus I'm paying half and the tribe paying. So now we have a way that we can maintain this program so it doesn't go away. But some cool things that Bill did this last year. You know, had some remote technology, remote meetings. They worked harvesting birch bark for crafts, cedar for ceremony, and trees to make teepee poles for their cultural campsite. And down here below, community volunteer teaching the evening reporting center youth and how to use pottery wheel. And so we have some really dedicated people in this county that are willing to step up for kids, not get paid a nickel. You know, this is, I think, Pastor Penny comes in from Finlayson and works with the kids and doesn't get anything out of it other than, you know, a pat on the back, and very much appreciative. But like some of the good stuff that we do here in Pine County. Let's see, anybody have any questions? I just double check my notes. Couple things in closing. So obviously we have some challenges and corrections. You guys know that about funding. The good thing is I'm on that committee called the Community Supervision Funding Policy Work Group, which will formally introduce a proposal to the legislature in January of 2022. In my 28-year career, this is the first time that it's gotten to this point where it's been signed off at last month's meeting. 86 out of 87 counties have signed off on it. We're just waiting the signature of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And everybody will be on board, so they're able to gather every county's data and so forth. There's 5 representatives from the DOC, 5 from our delivery system here in the CPO world, and 5 from MACAC that are appointed. I think this month they're going to bring judges into it. At some point they'll bring county attorneys into it. And the Council on State Governments is heading up this work group. And we all had to turn in some white papers, talk about what we think is important in funding. Maybe this is what our sacred cow is, or this is what they think our sacred cow is, or whatever, and see what type of recommendations we can get in January. So it's a lot of work. This work group meets every month, and but you know, hopefully we'll get somewhere because it's needed. The formula is not just bad for CPO counties; it's bad for CCA counties too. And the DOC wants to know what should they be mandated to fund. Not, you know, we might not get everything that we want, right? But everybody should be on a better playing field than we currently are. And then COVID-19, you know, obviously there were some challenges this last year, but I think, you know, again, as I just said a minute ago, it created some opportunities, right? We had an opportunity to enhance our service delivery and productivity with clients that probably wouldn't have shown up before. You know, and so there is some good that we've taken from that, and we'll continue to deliver some services that way. Any questions? I know that was a lot, but hopefully still awake.
Huh?
I stopped mine through it. You guys do some amazing work.
And I appreciate that, but again, it goes back to how I started the presentation in terms of my staff. I had this conversation recently with David. When I had my eval, he talked about the work that I've done on a statewide level, and I said, but that's only because I'm allowed to do that work, because I have the support of David, I have the support of the county board, I have terrific staff that I know are getting the work done back in the office while I'm trying to do some other stuff. If I didn't have that, I couldn't do that. And so I thank you all for that support, and and I thank my staff, because again, they're rock stars, and I don't say that lightly, but when you don't have to hire anybody new in 4 years, that speaks to them. So, thank you.
We appreciate all you're doing, and you're on the right track. I'm convinced you're on the right track to get ahead of that curve, so to speak, and maybe we'll get there.
We hope, huh? If it's.
I do have a question, Terry, as you know, sitting through the rest of this, we have this Recovery Act money. Is there a opportunity that we could see that we could do something more?
Well, that's a great question, and it's probably something I should bring up at my staff meeting tomorrow. David asked this question recently in a department head meeting, and I did follow up. I brought that back to the state directors and asked them, and there was really only one that got back to me, and it was, I think it was Otter Tail County, and it was some type of collaboration that they were gonna do with CD. And so, I need to ask people that are on the ground, my staff, and see what ideas that they might have, thinking outside the box. Trust me, there are ways that we like to spend money, but it's the rules that are put into place that just not sure that we can get there. We'll certainly look.
You've heard this speech before, I know, but we get that bill for $1 million, let's say, for out-of-home placement kids, and we have to pay it. And we just struggle to pay $137,000 to Extension, who's working with kids who never end up in your system. So if we got more kids involved in that end of the world, as you know, as a coach, I mean, that's where to turn them around, I think.
And you're right. I mean, I was on an IEP meeting a couple of weeks ago. The kid is on probation to one of my agents in the alternative school, and I was on PTO, and I was traveling, and so I attended it on the phone when I was driving, but here's a kid who has had some significant behavioral issues, which is why he's been going to the alternative school. He's now transitioning back into the fall, right, full time at this school, largely because there's a network of people around him, including one of my assistant coaches, that have known this family his entire life. And, he's gonna have speed bumps. He's gonna have some bumps in the road, right? But you have a bump in the road doesn't mean you send a kid out of home. That means you work with them, So there were weeks I said, you can't come to the weight room based on your behavior back in class. And he wouldn't come that week. Well, guess what? I couldn't have been prouder to be on that IEP, because I'm listening to teachers talk about how this kid has been a different kid. He's training some dogs for a school board member at East Central. And they talked to the school board member, talked about, you would never know that this kid has had some issues behaviorally, because he's the gentleman when he's training these dogs. What does that say? I said it earlier in the presentation. If you spend more quality time with a kid, they're gonna do okay, right? Most of them, and data shows that. But we all get wrapped up in numbers when we talk about, the last thing I'll say is, like, the DOC, for example, they're on this work group with us. They're also taking a look at some of their prison reform. prison reform equals letting offenders out of prison free. That's fine. Some of that's evidence-based too. But guess what? Probation officers have to supervise those people. So you can't talk about one without the other, and you shouldn't just spend all your time and that money and efforts talking about how we can supervise parolees. Shouldn't we supervise the people over here so they don't become parolees? I mean, that's why I've always scratched my head. Is that really that difficult for somebody to figure that out? And so, you know, I was just on, before I came in here, I was on a meeting with the deputy commissioner of corrections and talking through some of these issues. They're talking about it. I think they're gonna get to a point next Thursday where they're gonna agree on everything, but he has to put in some contingency plans about if they don't settle on a budget, agree on a budget by the end of the month, the DOC has to lay people off. I mean, you know, it's, you know, and again, police reform is front and center, should be, I understand it all. But it can't be at the expense of probation or correction, community corrections either. And I appreciate this board because I know every time legislators are in front of you, you bring it up, Commissioner Hallen, and it just needs to be said and resaid. But I said, you know, this work group that I'm on is the best effort that community corrections will ever be a part of to get something done for the better corrections. If I'm here next February and we haven't gotten anywhere, then I don't have a whole lot of answers for you at that point. Maybe my time to retire.
No,
Thank you.
thanks.
Thank you,
I
Terry.
know that was long, but David.
That was good.
Told me last week when I ran him in the hall that the agenda was short, so he said I had all the time.
That was very good. Thank you.
Thanks. Speaking of legislative, do we have any update?
So I know the Senate went into session at 11 o'clock and they adjourned at about 11:05. So that means they didn't get anything done, but there are a lot of committee meetings going on.
So I have thought about this. At what point do we have to make contingency plans if they don't get a resolution to they're dealing with?
Not yet.
Yeah.
That's satisfactory?
Yeah, because they're gonna figure it out.
Well,
I guess.
that's what we all hope, right? But they're really down to the wire. And it sounds like most of the legislators, at least that are being reported on, are thinking that this is 10 to 12 to 14 day process. This is not come together and have a deal that's already done.
Right.
There's a lot of actual work that has to be, which it doesn't take much to get off the rails.
So my question probably is more how, because we've gone through this before. We have a lot of departments that aren't really affected, whether or not the state shuts down or not, but we have some that are. And so we drag out the plan from what year was that last? I can't even remember. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but.
No. And since the last shutdown, there was a significant court decision that changed the criteria for what shutdown means. So the next shutdown will be more shutdown than the last, based on that court decision.
Okay. We'll wait for legislative updates. They have something to. AMC District 1. Terry and I went and was really good to see everybody again.
Good
And
to meet people.
Terry to meet.
That's a great meeting, isn't it?
It was.
For me to re-meet some people, but I appreciate some of those people's insight into issues. And it's always, to me, it's always good to know that other counties are struggling with the same issues. It also is enlightening to me to know that some of our issues that we think are really tough are really easy compared to what other counties are doing.
Yeah.
So,
I think for the last 5 or 6 years, that's been one of my favorite meeting. So was it
Yeah.
nice and fiery again and fire up guys or?
Yeah. No, it was,
So I was talking to Julie and Julie said that District 1 is one of the best districts because everybody talks and they work together on issues. And she said the other ones, you go there and you have to have a whole agenda, to go through the whole meeting because they don't work together. But she said District 1 is really a good group.
for some reason, none of us keep our mouth shut. Which is okay. You have anything that came out of that meeting that was earth shattering?
No, and this might be more evident to folks who've been around, for a while, but AMC has really upped their game in the last 4 or 5 years. And so I think if you went to a district meeting 5 years ago, you probably saw a different product than you're seeing now. And the AMC board has taken a significant leadership role. And Julie has worked hard with the associations, right? Whether it's the Administrator Association or the probation officers or, MAXA with the social services to coordinate those organizations. And AMC staffs most of those organizations.
Right.
So I think there's better feedback to the board, and the board is maybe demonstrating a little more leadership and helping us counties to get aligned on the things that are important to all of us.
That's really good point. It has been.
East Central Regional Juvenile Center.
Yeah, okay, that meeting, the whole meeting was about our joint powers agreement. That was it. Because there was some changes they were making. They didn't really give you a red line form, but the guy walked through it all, explained it. Terry's been working hard on it on their advisory thing. But if I summed it up for you, remember we had discussion about do we bail or whatever, and we have to figure that out. And do we do a half bed thing? And we explored that. And half bed isn't a good, the option is there. But it's first come, first serve, and then you're gonna, whatever, but, so we have both agreed that we'd stay with the one bed. And Reese has reviewed the agreement. There's gonna be some changes, but they're not in structural. There just might be more counties jumping in. I think since the meeting, 2 did, didn't they? 2. I think Benton. Yeah, okay. So there'll be some minor changes to the joint powers agreement, and Reese reviewed so we're looking good. That's all I really have. It'll come, that agreement will come in front of us when it's finalized, so.
Okay. Sounds good. CBR program, I think we're getting to the end. It's been a long, how many weeks was it? 16?
15.
It's been a long time.
We're getting to the end of that part, but then we've got a lot of work to do after that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And really our work for Pine County is just beginning.
Right.
And the exciting part, I think, for me is we actually have some projects that look like by within a year, we will pass another 1,000 homes in Pine County possibly, which is significant in a county that has Kelly tells me about 16,000 homes. So if you can pass another 1,000, that helps. So
I could just add, I think part of our next step is figuring out how to organize our effort for broadband. And we have had this CBR Accelerate team, which has been about 19 or 20 volunteers basically who have attended these meetings and participated and provided some good feedback and direction. If the county is going to commit to broadband, we need to find a home for it within our structure. And in my mind, that would be the Economic Development Committee, that it ties enough to economic development and that they could be kind of the institutional force that kept us moving.
yeah. Yep. So you guys got work coming.
It's a coordination in my mind, to keep the effort going, and figure out how to get all the parties at the table and keep them there. But I know it's hard structurally when we have initiatives that don't fit anywhere.
I think the lesson that I have taken away from it is the incredible amount of money gap between a company's ROI and what it really costs to build service. I mean, it's incredible.
I remember the admonition that one of the people made on the call a few weeks ago, and I can't remember if they were with CTC or Mille Lacs Energy or whoever those providers are that are on our calls regularly, but they said, always remember that the person who does the pro forma is showing you what they want to show you.
Right.
Was that Joe?
Maybe it was Joe.
Yeah. Yes.
But so not that the information is not true, but it includes and excludes what's most advantageous for what the message they're sending is.
Yes, that is true.
Which I found helpful, because otherwise it's daunting,
Right,
right?
right. Soil and water.
Yes, meeting was the 9th. It's a quick meeting, kind of ties into our broadband because we lost communications. Again, Aaron from Bowser and I both were cut off for a while.
Huh.
But what I did get from it, and I look back at now the draft of the minutes, they appointed Jack Frechette to the District 2
Okay,
to replace the loss, and then Paul is officially made manager now.
Is that Jerry Weiss's position?
Yes. And then Paul made it through it was a 180-day
okay,
period, so he was officially the manager and he accepted.
good.
Pretty much business as usual over there, other than that. I just had announced to them also that there was a meeting up in Moose Lake at the Holy Angels Church for the high water situation on Sturgeon. Just so they were of course in the loop on that whole situation. That's all I have for soil and water.
How did their tree program go this year?
I have that in the minutes, but that was
Yeah.
part of the meeting where we lost.
Wasn't it pretty much a sellout?
It's,
Yeah,
historically, it's always just,
Stuff I wanted was gone.
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, historically, it's just been a
It's-
great program.
It's, the whole DNR tree program kind of angers me because they shut down Willow River.
Yep.
And now because they said they could handle it all in Bedora. And I ordered a couple thousand trees this year in November. Went back to try to increase my order before Christmas and they were sold out. I mean, I don't know how many million trees they lifted this year, but they were completely sold out. But that's good. That's a good thing. It's bad that
My back hurts thinking about you planting 2,000 trees.
I got kids and grandkids.
And you had a tree plant.
Me, that planet.
I heard some had surplus. My son-in-law, because he orders all the time for planting, but the pine trees last year didn't sell out. So they, so they grew another year, so
Hey, well, they didn't lift any last year.
Oh, yeah, because of the,
They canceled our order last year.
okay,
And so they got the transplants that were normally this high they got
Yeah.
a bigger growth.
bigger root system.
Law library.
It's this Thursday.
Okay.
It got changed.
Jobs and training. I had a meeting Friday. Ironically, well, of course, most of the discussion revolved around a possible shutdown because jobs and training is really affected by a shutdown. And the ironic thing to me is the unemployment numbers are still way up here. And I've never, in my 70 years of life, never seen as many ads looking for workers in my life. So we can all guess our best guess, probably all be right about why that is, but the jobs and training people aren't getting the funding to get people back into the saddle. Retraining money is not where it should be. But I don't know, it's kind of a head scratcher for me.
Do they have any idea how many people are just dropping out of the market? You know what, by the numbers and
It's hard, once they drop out of the system, it's really hard to track them. Because they don't know if they just retired or they,
yeah, right. I was just wondering how they figured it out. But
I don't know.
keep hearing people are dropping.
Yeah. East Central Solid Waste, we had a meeting Monday. We did come to an understanding about the CWD with the Kanabec County Commissioner because life changes quickly. And there's a possible positive case out of Kanabec County. And so they were a little more humble now. And so life changed. And it's sad that it has to happen that way, but I think we got back on the same page, so to speak. And I had read that Florida Animal Health was forced to give up their jurisdiction over these small farms. There is no movement of deer now between farms. That's been a DNR imposed rule now. So they gotta get a handle on this. And I think they're talking about an influx of money to the researchers at the University of Minnesota to figure out, there's so many unknown things yet. So hopefully some good can come out of it.
Hope they can get a live test figured out.
Apparently, I heard on Monday that they think they have a live test that they can test the urine or something or blood, and I hadn't read that, but according to Lisa from Chisago County, they had to library.
They are circulating park passes now at the libraries. Shout out to Heidi, the librarian in Pine City. She put together a grant in like a weekend and got $4,500. And what they're going to be using it for is backpacks. They're going to have like bird identifiers and flower identifiers and trees and that kind of stuff for the kids so that go to the state parks. Or if they want to use it in their backyard, they can have these backpacks that will do that. So it was nice to hear it was a Pine County librarian that did that. They got $122,000 in their ARPA money, and so they're looking for things that they can spend that on. They're not going to be meeting in July. It's just the budget committee in July, and so they've got a couple of grants that we gave permission for them to submit the apps. This is the big one for the counties. Because the 2020 numbers are not normal numbers for them to do their budgeting with, they will be using the 2019 numbers to create the budget. And then the goal is for us to have the money that they're going to need after their July 12th meeting, so we can figure that out with budgeting too.
So it should be really unchanged, right? Or,
Unless they figure a little bit more for, I don't know.
okay,
Yeah, but using 2019 numbers is the best that they have right now.
okay, yeah.
In their new building?
Yes, it's very nice.
I haven't been there yet. I'm gonna stop over. But the one thing you will find out is me and David had this conversation. They got a very large reserve.
Yes, they do.
are afraid to use it. So I've had to push pretty hard to get some out of it. But,
Yeah.
So if there is any increases, I don't know. So good luck.
Thanks.
Chemical Health Coalition.
The Lionheart crew is going to be coming around to all 4 schools. So Previously, they'd only been doing the Sandstone School, the East Central and the Hinckley School because that was what was part of the coalition. But because the money's gone in the coalition, correct me if I'm saying this wrong, they're bringing the Lionheart crew in and they're going to do all 4 schools. So Hinckley and East Central will have 2 performances by them. They promote positiveness or positivity. And then the Pine City and the Willow River School will have one promotion there with each one. Because the grants end this month, I'm still looking at how to keep this coalition going and where we want to see it going, if it's going to be mental health or heroin or opioids, if we're going to stick to teens or if we're going to go to families, which way that's going to be directed. So there's going to be a committee that's going to be coming up that will talk about some of these issues that can bring it to a whole. Next week, I'll be doing 3 classes with the Montana Institute through here. And so we'll see if we can get some ideas through there or just get some more training or if you want to add to that.
No, that was great. Well, Reese reached out to get ideas where we're gonna go and they're forming some committees. And then the committees are gonna meet and try to decide the path throughout the whole county to be more inclusive. And I think you covered it fine.
So we talked a lot, Kevin Glass was on the call and he had talked about how the families, like a kid coming home and the dad saying, hey, let's get high together, how the families are, we need to, so do we work with the adults and the families that are bringing down their kids so I mean, there's so much to consider with this one. And then do we meet monthly or bi-monthly or have 2 different committees that meet 1 month and then get together as a group and meet the second month and discuss where they've gone.
Yeah, and Kevin did a good job speaking yesterday afternoon. He's an asset to that. I think he's, just a nice different perspective.
Only if he's watching.
Appreciate it.
Board of Equalization.
Or you want me to do it?
We took our oath,
Yeah.
Took our oath
listened.
and we listened. And the guy rambled on. We let him ramble on because they only had one. But I think my takeaway from that is our staff does an amazing job because I had more phone calls this year than I ever had about people's values going up. And I encouraged them to go talk to staff. And so all of those got whittled down. So they didn't come to a public meeting. People just want to know an answer. Why did my value go up 50,000 or 20,000 or whatever?
Yeah.
I didn't do anything. No, you didn't.
Driven, right? It's hard to.
And everybody, we had this discussion last night, everybody thinks because their value goes up, their taxes are going to go up proportionately. But in a perfect world, because we levy in dollars, if everybody's valuation went up 20%, your taxes doesn't mean your taxes are going up 20%. They're going to go up whatever we raise our levy.
Yeah, you would hope that the tax rate.
But in a perfect,
rate.
we don't live in a perfect world.
Right.
So my taxes might go up 10%, yours might go up 4%. I think we found that out in the years when we levied 0 for many years, 0% increase. My taxes, my neighbor's taxes, some years went up, some years went down. They never were 0. My taxes have never gone up the same amount that we levy or gone down the same amount we've levied. So
There's a lot of different factors, like when you got your school.
there's a lot of impactors.
City and. But the gentleman that came yesterday, he was okay with his valuation for this year for his tax. But it's big, he was really upset about his increase that he had the year before that he didn't do the procedure last year to take care of it, and so he has to pay those taxes. So he was okay with his value. So it was no change, but then Lori had brought, I think, 4 different things where there were changes that needed to be made. So then those changes were made after the township.
And that's the only one we could have discussed anyway.
Pardon?
That's the only one we could have done anything with anyway. That one was adjusted perfectly.
Right,
Right.
yeah,
Can't go backwards.
right, exactly. And we can't talk taxes, which is what he wanted to talk, so.
So you'll see a list of the upcoming meetings.
Sure.
But yes,
Could I just do a couple of quick updates?
yep,
Under this other category?
yep.
I need to add a caveat on the city and township American Rescue Plan amounts, that whatever the spreadsheet says, that amount is capped at 75% of their budget. So if their calculated amount is greater than 75% of what their actual budget is, they will get the lesser amount. So that would be different than the spreadsheet.
Okay.
And then the other piece I wanted to throw out is, if we are back in person and comfortable with that, we have a committee of the whole scheduled for the end of June. We may want to put one out in July to get on people's calendars, because I know we will have some topics. I know Paul from SWCD is interested. JJ had talked about the Sturgeon Lake level. That might be a topic for a committee of the whole to talk about if there's a county rule for that. The East Central Regional Juvenile Center Joint Powers Agreement revisions, that might be a COW. So I'm sure we would have plenty of topics if we wanted to give thought to a date in July.
What date are you looking? The first, for me, I'm gonna jump. I'm gonna tell you right now, so you know, I will have to be virtual on the late June committee of the whole. And if you do the meeting in July, between the 1st and the 12th, I could be in person.
That's pretty close to the June one.
That's holidays in there too, so,
That, I think doing it before the 12th of July would be very challenging.
yeah.
So the 27th will not work?
I think
Well,
there may be a conflict.
20s, I don't know yet. I might be here and I might be in Alaska.
Oh, I'd go to Alaska.
I would. I can't find there's 3 things I need. A place to stay, a plane ticket, and a rental car
Oh,
to get to the place I'm gonna stay. Don't have all the things lined up yet.
So I guess if we looked in early August, would like August 10th, I won't be here, I'm sorry.
So now, going forward though, we still have the virtual option as long as the governor?
As long as there's a public health emergency, and as long as you're in agreement that it's not feasible or prudent or reasonable or prudent, whatever the statutory language is, for all commissioners to meet in person.
But we met in person and I feel okay, but I think the virtual option is, we've learned how to deal with that so well.
Well, it just seems to work if
Yeah.
you need it to work. Like,
Yeah.
if you're going to Alaska, if you can find a connection.
Yeah, I could be there.
Yeah, and
And we could, regardless of the public health emergency, if you knew in advance which hotel you're in.
Right. That's the problem though, when you're traveling,
Yeah.
it's, you don't know.
Maybe in Alaska too,
That's the
then.
That's the thing the legislators haven't learned from this pandemic is
You going up there too?
we can still hold accountable public meetings and be open,
Yeah.
but their language is so archaic from previous, before this, maybe they'll catch on here these days.
But in any case, my sense is that we have topics that will benefit from committee of the whole meeting discussions. And once we get into August and September, we're pretty much doing budget primarily, so it's hard to get.
If we look at that week of the 19th through the, like the 21st or something of July. I know, Matt, you would have to be virtual. Anybody else? Don?
I'm possibly gonna be out west for the last,
What dates you looking at? 19th to the 23rd?
Yeah,
Huh?
yeah.
maybe the last,
That Wednesday is wide open, the 21st.
And on the 20,
I have nothing on the 21st.
could you pop in virtually?
yeah. And then I'm also gonna be up in Alaska, actually the 10th of August,
He's got a place to stay.
22nd.
Maybe I'll take your place.
Rental cars are really hard to
Yeah.
get, very difficult.
They got rid of a
You have a
lot.
thumb, don't you?
Yeah, we borrowed a vehicle, so we lucked out, but
So I've,
21st might work.
I'm sorry.
July 21st might work.
$300 a day.
We'll try to tap in virtually.
Or the, yeah,
What,
does that work for you, David?
yep. When do you leave, JJ? Or are you,
10th of August,
okay.
and the last 2 weeks of July, I got penciled in to be back out west to South Dakota, Wyoming, Montana.
So if the 20,
Pull into the Irma Hotel on the 21st for a couple hours. You're in Cody.
Oh, all right.
They got a good connection there.
Go through Cody. I'll bring everything with the phone, the computer, it's,
okay, so
Cool for-
like 9 o'clock on the 21st,
Of July?
and we'll confirm a location, but this might be the place.
Dave?
For the boardroom in Pine City, because I can hear better in that room. Is that done yet?
The technology
900?
scheduled to be installed the week prior.
Perfect.
So
We'll test it out.
are we confident, or
The installation will be done. I don't know if the programming will be done.
Okay.
we would,
The year's fine. I mean, we got a month.
yeah, we would know in time to repost the meeting to change the location if
Yeah.
required. So we'll plan for the boardroom on the 21st.
So I'm deleting the 27th.
There is no meeting planned for the 27th. There was a tentative with the regional DNR director, but that is moved to, I think, the second regular meeting in August.
So I just deleted off my calendar.
What is the broadband meeting that's scheduled for July 21st?
I think that's a regional meeting that Leslie is going to cover for us,
Okay,
although she probably maybe doesn't know that.
Maybe she's going to Alaska.
Is that the Blandon regional one that they have?
There's a planning meeting for the Landon Fall Broadband Conference. And so they're trying to pick the brains of the CBR Accelerate communities. I think that's what that meeting is.
So July 21st at 9.
So when is the state supposed to lift does it go through June?
They tell the legislators, they vote every time they get
That stays on and we can virtual.
Turns out the vote,
Fine.
this is the 19th
Set this.
they had, it turns out the same as the first vote. You'd think they'd get tired of banging their head against the wall, but
I'm sorry, Matt, I did not hear what you said.
June, I thought, were they saying June 31st
So the
ending?
declaration or the public health emergency was extended yesterday for another 30 days.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
So that's the reason that the special session was yesterday.
Oh, so
Governor extended it. The legislature didn't have the votes to override it. That's the 19 votes that Steve was talking about. So it's in effect for another 30 days.
From yesterday?
Day. And so I mean, I have no insight, right? But in my mind, there's a lot of sausage being made right now in St. Paul. So I'm sure ending the public health emergency is being discussed by someone in some of those meetings.
Or by everybody.
Yeah, right. So maybe there's an agreement by the end of the month that approves a budget, passes the remaining bills in some form, and has an agreement on when the public health emergency ends.
Okay.
But at this point, it's been extended 30 days from yesterday. Which we don't probably know what authority the governor has to circumvent the shutdown if it's a public health emergency, right? So that might give him additional authority that he doesn't have when there's not an emergency. So what is open and what is closed is probably not anything we can guess at right now.
Anything else? We will look for a motion to recess from this meeting and go to closed session.
So we have two closed meetings proposed. One of them is to receive an update from the county attorney on the Pine County versus OP TLF properties and the Minnesota Land Trust. The county attorney has been in negotiations with the parties and has a proposal will be presented. And so after that closed session, the county board can come into open session and give direction, which could range from not accepting the settlement to accepting the settlement. Okay. Then we would have a closed session for the review of the county administrator. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So if you're on the last page of the agenda, number 8 is where we're at. If someone a motion to do, we could like take a little 5-minute recess, and then we will leave this room. The WebEx will remain open for the public, and we're going to go into the conference room on the south corner of the building.
Okay.
All right, so I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
Any discussion? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Could you repeat who made the motion, who seconded, please?
Josh and Terry.
Okay, thank you.
And that was a motion to go into closed session under statute 0.05 subdivision 3B for the purpose of doing, under the attorney-client privilege for reviewing a settlement offer in litigation.
Thank you.
And then. Record this.
My son texts me, he's working in Scott County today. He says, how long do your board meetings go? He said, these guys started at 8, they're still
Oh,
going.
my gosh.
We have some. Let's not try to beat them.
No,
Well, if you get a coffee, then or I'll check. Thanks.
okay. We'll call the meeting back to order. Everybody get caught up in their phone calls and their messages.
You late to your dinner?
And
Say it again.
Are you late to this?
we have been informed of a settlement agreement with the Minnesota Land Trust and the OBs. And I think we're ready to move on that. So I'm looking for a motion to, what would we say, accept the agreement?
Motion to approve the proposed settlement with the parties in the amount of $27,500 and include the agreement of a 7-year moratorium on taking gravel out of that portion of the memorial forest over the easement.
There you go.
I'll make that motion.
Thanks, Terry.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. That passes. Now I need a motion to go into closed session for the purpose of discussing County Administrator Minke's annual performance.
How'd we go move?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, you're right there. Late to your desk. Are you in late?
Debbie. Hello? Hi.
Learn something every day.
Huh?
I get sick of sitting. Not used to it.
Okay, we're back in section. Back in order, and we've had a review of County Administrator David Menke's job performance. He passed, he did a good job,
Studied hard.
he studied hard. We are very pleased with his work performance, especially this last year was very challenging for many organizations, and I think we not only just kept doing, we did really good, neat things. I mean, we went above and beyond, so we thank David for his leadership in that, and got a very positive review. So we did talk about raising the cap of the administrative salary. And I don't know if somebody wants to make a motion to that effect.
I'll make a motion to raise the cap to $155,000.
All right, Moore makes a motion
Ludwig will second.
and Ludwig seconds. Is there any discussion? Doesn't mean David's gonna make 155. That's, we're raising the cap to 155. So no discussion. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Now, do we have a motion for a salary increase for David?
I will make a motion that Administrator Menke gets a 3%
I'll second.
on his anniversary date, which I think is July
Second.
2nd.
Does it need to say performance?
Hmm?
It needs to say performance increase?
Yeah, performance increase, right.
And I'll
Got a
second.
motion by Ludwig, seconded by Moore to give Administrator Menke a 3% performance raise on his anniversary, which is July 2nd. Any discussion on that? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Opposed, same sign. I think we are at the end of the agenda. Thank you all. Declare the meeting adjourned.
I don't know where my agenda is.
I lost mine twice already.
Huh?
I lost mine twice already.
Yeah.
What do you got going on now, Joe? How's the house?
It's here somewhere.
Debbie, do you know, is Leslie in the office?
I'm still waiting for window.
When I walked by, she was not.
Okay. All right, I might try to call her because join our map.
Steve,
Disappointed with.
Steve, what?
Dave has all of the paperwork for you to sign
So
with him.
basically.
Oh, okay.
Perfect.
Just see.
I'll start signing. Do I have a blue pen?
Oh, of any of it.
Okay.
With the scholarship,
Leave that here, huh?
with the scholarship thing,
I and Leslie, we're gonna
David was on board, when we were